If Jesus is truly who the Bible says he is, for me, it's something to kind of hold secret because it's not for public display.
I'm not here to definitively stake a claim as to whether or not Jordan Peterson is a Christian. And for the most part, I will not be making judgments of right or wrong about him. But what I will be doing is describing his line of thinking in great detail, and offering a different perspective than I think most theologians. Now, first, why is everyone so obsessed whether or not this singular man is a Christian or not? The first reason is people want him on their team, so they want to know where he stands. Secondly, some Christians feel that Jordan Peterson might be leading others astray, both Christians and non-Christians. And thirdly, many are envious of his genius and success, all while being completely oblivious to all the suffering he has to endure.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I was in extreme pain for 3 years. Right. I went through 3 years where every minute of my life was worse than any minute I had ever had previous to that.
Besides external factors, most geniuses must endure internal suffering. Take, for example, the comedic genius Robin Williams.
Stunning to be back on your show. Nice to have you, Robin lad.
Who had bipolar disorder. He ultimately committed suicide. Jordan Peterson suffers from depression. And anger and anxiety are also associated with depression, so being in a stressful environment like Jubilee may have triggered some of these emotions. Of course, he did voluntarily choose to take on this venture, knowing very well that this game prioritizes drama and entertainment over content and value.
The intellect that you have as one of the most, I would say, one of the smartest guys in the world, one of the most intellectual people alive today.
Statistics. Let's start here. Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist, which means he primarily helps people with psychiatric disorders through therapy as opposed to a medical doctor who prescribes medication. He also has an extremely high IQ, 150 plus. In particular, he has an extremely high verbal IQ, meaning he speaks eloquently with precision and value. To have all three is very difficult. For instance, most politicians might be eloquent, but bring little precision or value to the table. Then there are those who articulate well and bring precision, but not much value. For example, running off a bunch of statistics that do not provide evidence for their point. When one articulates in speech, it is so hard to possess all three simultaneously: eloquence, precision, and value. This is one of the reasons Jesus is so interesting. People had never heard anyone speak like him before.
For me, it's something to kind of hold secret because it's not for public display.
Do you believe in God?
I don't think that's anybody's business. I think it's the most private question you can ask someone.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression.
private.
I was invited to tell me. I was under the impression.
private.
I was invited.
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
I did comment while I was away on whether or not Jordan Peterson was a Christian. I said, full stop, without question, no, he's not. I'm not saying that I don't want him to be. I absolutely want the man to know Jesus. I was saying, if he will not openly confess Christ and show his union with Jesus Christ, that he's died with Christ, been raised with Christ, if he's not talking like that, then no, he doesn't understand the gospel. No, he's not a Christian.
Oh, really? Did you consider this statement made by Jordan Peterson on the Diary of a CEO only 4 months earlier? Or Jordan's statement on Piers Morgan made even earlier? Or these confessions made on his podcast? Why are some theologians making these remarks? It seems to be coming from looking at the passage in Romans, chapter 10, verses 8 through 11 in the Bible.
The word is near you, in your mouth and in your heart. That is, the word of faith which we are preaching, that if you confess with your mouth Jesus as Lord, and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with your heart a person believes, resulting in righteousness, and with the mouth he confesses, resulting in salvation. For the scripture says, whoever believes in him will not be put to shame. And then in verse 13 it says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Now, I should point out, this profession of faith that Paul is talking about is usually first made in private, just you and the Lord, and then again publicly when you are baptized. But it only makes sense to continue to profess Jesus as Lord, Or equivalent today, we might say acknowledging being a Christian, if we truly have the Holy Spirit.
I'm going to ask you again because I want to be clear. Is what is the God you believe in?
I think that the claim that Christ is the embodiment of the prophet and the laws, I think that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
That's complicated. It's very, very complicated, but I think it's true.
so you believe that Jesus was
God?
God?
Yeah. I think if you understand what that means, that it's indisputable. Christ takes the sins of the world onto himself. I'll stake my life on the proposition that God exists. How's that?
Well,
is that an answer?
Well,
That's the right answer. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and that is actually about as true a statement as you could manage in such a short phrase.
if you became absolutely convinced, yes, that's real. Wow. It is terrifying. It is terrifying. I am turning my life over to you. Do what you will with me. And you really did that. If you were willing to do that,
I already did that.
What a situation.
Long time ago.
You did?
I did that a long time ago.
To talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
Luke 9:26, for whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him will the Son of Man be ashamed when he comes in his glory and the glory of the Father and of the holy angels.
Has to leave us with some kind of question, and that is, well, are they ashamed of Jesus and his words?
Yeah.
Anybody else thinking about a Bible verse right now? I don't know what's going on inside of his heart. I don't know why he chose to be coy about his religious identification. But I do know that Jesus said, if you're ashamed of me before men, I'll be ashamed of you before my Father in heaven. That is a scary sentence that may or may not apply to Jordan Peterson, who went about the business of trying to defend whatever his worldview is in front of 20 atheists. And I have to tell you, it was nothing short of a disaster.
Why do some theologians think the issue is shame? Why do they think Jordan Peterson won't stake his position on being a Christian or not because he feels ashamed of the gospel? The reason is they made a fear of man category error. There are 3 subcategories or reasons for why we fear man. 1 is we fear people because they can humiliate or expose us. In other words, shame fear, which is what these pastors are talking about in this category. Then there is 2, we fear people because they can reject us. And finally, 3, we fear people because they can physically harm us. A better explanation from observation and doing some research is that Jordan Peterson does not share his beliefs because he fears rejection from hostile and disingenuous people. You can also see the expression on Jordan Peterson's face is more of stress and anger than fright. And connected with this rejection fear is a favorite proverbs of his, of not throwing pearls to swine, as said by Jesus in Matthew 7:6. It's like, you have demonstrated to me that you don't deserve to know this intimate part about me. How I identify with Christianity and what I value in it is only going to be rejected, degraded, and mocked by you. This seems to be Jordan's line of thinking. Would you share intimate details about your life with some jerk?
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him. There's a line in the New Testament that's relevant to that. Do not cast pearls before swine. And what that means is that if people are not listening to you, stop talking to them.
Right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a Christian or you're not.
I won't talk to you if you're a smartass.
Either you're a Christian or you're not.
And that's a good guideline to life in general. So pull back. And that is the best piece of advice that I can give you. And what happens is that if you stop talking to people who aren't listening to you and start watching them instead, they will tell you what they're up to. But so if you have things to say, you say them, but you find people that will listen, talk to them. The ones who aren't listening, pull back. Because you're devaluing what you have to say by offering it to an audience that does nothing but reject it.
We are, however, commanded to share the gospel with anybody. But there does come a point when it does say in Proverbs where we are to leave a fool to their folly and shake the dust off our feet, as Jesus has said.
Matthew chapter 7, verse 6. Do not give the dogs what is holy. Do not throw your pearls before swine. If you do, they may trample them under their feet, and then turn and tear you to pieces. It's very helpful to come here to BibleHub.com and read the commentary on these verses. Let's read the commentary of "If you do, they may trample them under their feet" to get an understanding of what Jordan Peterson is concerned about. This part of the verse illustrates the potential outcome of sharing sacred truths with those who are not receptive. The image of trampling suggests disdain and disrespect, indicating that the message may be rejected and treated with contempt. This reflects the broader biblical theme of the rejection of God's message by those who harden in heart, as seen in the parable of the sower, where the seed on the path is quickly devoured. Then here it says, "And then they may turn and tear you to pieces." The warning here is not only about the rejection of the message, but also about the potential danger to the messenger. The imagery of being torn to pieces suggests a violent reaction, highlighting the hostility that can also arise from those who reject spiritual truths. This echoes Jesus' own experiences as he faced opposition and persecution from those who rejected his message. This also serves as a caution to believers to be wise and discerning in their evangelistic efforts, understanding that not all will receive the message with openness or peace.
In conclusion, we all suffer from shame fear this side of heaven, but the point is this is not the predominant reason for Jordan withholding his identity.
Why does Jordan Peterson hesitate to share his religious beliefs? It's twofold. One, it appears, is rejection fear, and the second is he doesn't want to appear prideful like the Pharisees.
Don't be like the Pharisees. Here is the crux of the argument for why Jordan Peterson sometimes does not explicitly identify as a Christian. He is afraid to be proud like a Pharisee. Perhaps he feels constantly proclaiming, "I am a Christian," on public television is equivalent to what the Pharisees do in the streets of praying in public and acting holier than thou. He mentions all the extreme protesters are a good example of people who act like the Pharisees. He does not want any part of it. But in the process of trying too hard not to be like the Pharisees, you can also become prideful. If you stress action too much, you can end up doing reverse somersaults into Pharisee ritual devoid of intimacy.
That's, what do you say? That's the
truth.
Protection against religious hypocrisy as well. You know, part of the reason I'm loath in many ways to talk about directly about what I believe, let's say, is because I'm not really that interested in taking credit for what I believe. You know what I mean? For me, it's something to kind of hold secret because it's not for public display. Because the problem with public display is that that's the pathway of the Pharisees. And so it's dangerous to pray in public and to make your case known in the streets, let's say. And then I'm also going to proclaim, exactly as the Pharisees do in the gospel text, I'm going to proclaim my moral virtue to elevate my standing in the community. I'm going to pray in public like the protesters do, and I'm going to take the best seats in the synagogue. And so the Pharisees are moral hypocrites, right? But you can imagine a hypocrite who says all sorts of wonderful things and does nothing. And you can imagine another person who acts in a very positive manner, but proclaims nothing. Look, I'm trying to say the things that I believe serve the truth. And I have reason for that, because I know what the alternative is. The alternative's bleak, bleaker than you can imagine.
Jordan Peterson has studied totalitarian regimes in great depth. The Gulag with Stalin, the Holocaust with Hitler, and Mao's Great Famine, for example. He has probably put himself very deeply in the shoes of both the tyrants and the victims, and is terrible to comprehend and feel.
Yeah, well, there's a statement that Christ makes in the Gospels. He says, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Christ himself points out that there's a difference between people who say they believe and people who act it out. And the fundamental issue is the action rather than the stated belief.
Would you ever turn your life over to him? If you truly believed he was, would you turn your life over to him?
Well, if you truly believed that, turning your life over to him under those conditions would be exactly the same as believing it. Belief isn't, as you already pointed out, belief isn't a set of statements about what you believe to be true. It's a way of living. By their fruits you will know them. Well, it depends on what you mean by belief. See, because I would say that acting out the pattern is the deepest form of belief.
Stating whether someone is or isn't a Christian shouldn't be a big deal, but perhaps he fears watering down his own beliefs by merely stating them. Jordan believes belief is more action-oriented than verbal-oriented. It is really interesting to think about. What axiomatic beliefs are deeply embedded within us? What actions do we do unconsciously? You might call those habits. So how do we break bad habits and create good new ones? It's like, on the one hand, talk can be cheap. But on the other hand, sometimes the courage to speak up is that action we are talking about. In particular, many of the participants in this Jubilee merely want to get a gotcha moment on him. This appears why Jordan Peterson has professed to others, but not here.
Hey, Dr. Peterson.
How you doing?
Danny, nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Danny.
Danny.
Danny starts out so polite. Look at Jordan's face. His first impression of Danny is that of a respectful young man, but appears to have been all a guise. However, Danny does point out some important notions about Catholicism to be wary of.
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
To talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
But to be like a full Christian, how can someone say I am Christian? Like I am Christian.
Well, I hesitate to do that personally because I think it's the kind of goal that you be very careful about proclaiming.
Was this a Peter moment? Peter denied Jesus, despite propositionally telling him, "I will not."
Here in Luke 22, Peter denies Jesus 3 times. But first, Jesus foretells Peter's denial. In verse 33, Peter says, Peter said to him, "Lord, I am ready to go with you to both prison and to death." Jesus said, "I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow this day until you deny 3 times that you know me." And then here starting in verse 54, Peter denies Jesus 3 times. First encounters a servant girl, and then a servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the light and looking closely at him, said, "This man also was with him." But he denied, saying, "Woman, I do not know him." So here's a question you can pause the video for. What category of fear of man is Peter displaying here? Well, if you go back up here, Peter says, "I am ready to go to both prison and to death with you." And then after this, Judas betrays Jesus in the garden. So Peter's displaying the fear of physical harm by man.
Those aren't exactly parallel. Every time we sin, we are denying Christ with our actions. Was Peter a Christian at the time? Well, he literally followed Jesus, as the term Christian is supposed to mean Jesus follower. In conclusion, we can say this and we can say that about whether Jordan Peterson won or lost in the Jubilee debate, whether it was a disaster or success. But at the end of the day, Jordan is not trying to beat anyone at an argument. He is trying to understand them, and he is trying to have them understand him. So I think it would be beneficial to do more research and more analysis before making any further judgments on Jordan Peterson. And also, it'd be more beneficial to just invite him for an interview so that you can talk to him directly and ask him those questions that you have. Or another way to put it is, you can talk to him rather than talking about him. My final point is this issue of shame evidence for the existence of God in the Bible? The fact that we are all seemingly born with this nebulous shame that looks like the picture of Adam and Eve after sinning in Genesis. That we all, to some degree, have this shame fear. Okay, like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. This is the book I used about talking about the fear of man. It's a great book, When People Are Big and God is Small, by Ed Welch. And these 2 books of mine are also really great books. Learning Isn't Linear and God-Given Gusto.